Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live discussion on the impact of COVID-19 on the tourism sector in Sri Lanka. This session is organized by the Advocata Institute, and Advocata is an economic and public policy think tank based in Sri Lanka. We work to promote sound public policy ideas for a freer and more prosperous Sri Lanka. So you might already know this. This is the third of our series on COVID and the impact on our economy. And you can tune into the conversation. If you are facing any technical difficulties, you can always tune into the conversation live on our Facebook page via Advocata Institute. Before we begin the session, I would like for all of us to observe a minute of silence in remembrance of all of the lives lost on a day like this last year due to the Easter Sunday attacks. So I suggest we first observe a minute of silence. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're now going to move on to the session, and the session will be moderated by Mr. Murtaza Jafferjee. Just a couple of housekeeping rules before we move into the session. I would recommend that all attendees keep your mics and your cameras switched off. We are taking in questions via slido.com. You can send us your questions with the code #COVIDLK. And if you face any technical difficulties at all, or if you can't join the call, because our webinar platform can only accommodate 500 participants on the Zoom call, you can always direct yourself towards our Facebook page where we're live streaming and we're taking up questions. So Mr. Jafferjee, over to you.
Thank you, Anuki. I gather everybody can hear me and see me. Before we start our formal discussion, I have prepared a presentation of some slides, which I believe that you can see now. Everybody who joins this call is not necessarily experienced tourism people. So bear with me for maybe 15 to 20 minutes where I will give you an overview so that we can have a better audience participation and understanding. Before I go into my formal presentation, let me introduce the panelists for today. Let's start with the lady Kimarli Fernando, who basically is the head of the Tourist Development Authority and the Tourist Promotion Organization. Then we have Mahen Kariyawasam, who is the chairman of the Sri Lanka Inbound Tour Operators. It's an industry body, and when he starts speaking, he will explain who his membership is. Then we have Mr. Sanath Ukwatte, who is the chairman of TASL, which is a hotel association, and he will also likewise explain his membership. And then lastly, but finally, but not least, it's Vipula, who is the current CEO of Sri Lankan Airlines. On that note, let me start on my presentation. I will cover the key value chain of tourism so that the audience has some base. There's a lot of slides here. You may not be able to keep up with everything. We will put it on our website, and at your leisure, you can go through it. So let me first look into the economic contribution of tourism. First, some definitions. Who is a tourist? It's a visitor, domestic, inbound, or outbound, whose trip includes an overnight stay. So generally, there's a 24-hour definition. And what is hospitality? Because this is called the hospitality industry. The definition is the friendly and generous reception and entertainment of guests, visitors, or strangers. I also put in the definition of what is a hospital, because the word hospitality and hospital seems to have the same root, and it says an institution providing medical and surgical treatment and nursing care for sick or injured people. Okay, so what was tourism's contribution to GDP over the last few years? Now, this is a tricky subject to correctly account for, but as per our statistics, which covers the accommodation, food, and beverages sector only, it's about 1.5% of GDP. And last year, because the subsector contracted, it has made a negative contribution, a marginal negative contribution to growth. But that sub-indices only captures certain sectors, which is the lodging, restaurant, and accommodation sector. There are many other sectors where tourists also engage with. So, for example, they would go to cultural sites and attractions, wildlife parks. They also engage in a lot of transportation, inland transportation. They may be catching trishaws, they may do buses, inland airlines, and they probably also buy goods, shopping, souvenirs, etc. Now, all these subsectors are not captured under tourism. And I've shown on the left the general contribution of these sectors to the total economy. So it's only a subset that will be consumed by tourists. And there is a system by the UN. The UN has a manual to prepare national accounting, and it's called satellite accounts. So there is an agreed methodology globally of how to tabulate statistics for tourism, which has a lot of multipliers. Unfortunately, Sri Lanka has not adopted satellite accounting for tourism, but I do know that the Statistics Office is planning to do that going forward. So let's see the financial contribution. Now, last year, 2019, we had about 1.9 arrivals. The previous year, we had about 2.3 million. So there was a significant drop due to the Easter. And it is estimated that the average tourist spends about $1,876 last year. That's based on an assumption of a 10.5-day average stay in Sri Lanka multiplied by the average spend. And the graph on the right shows you the total receipts, and this is often quoted in the press. So even last year, although it was a down year, the official number is $3.6 billion, which is a sizable amount. Now, if you drill down further, and this is from the Tourist Development Authority statistics book, it shows you their estimate of how much a tourist spends per day. And I don't have the 2019 figure because the statistical report has not been released as yet, but the 2018 shows it at $173. And they have a methodology of how they tabulate this. The last one I had on record was going back 3-4 years ago. So as an estimate, we just took the same proportions. And this shows roughly how they get that figure. They may have slightly changed the methodology, and I stand corrected if they have done that. But this is just an illustrative example. So it's not all accommodation. There are other activities also that are recognized. So my sense is that this inflow figure, which is a significant number, is being overstated. And again, I only have it for 2000 up to 2018. This is from a balance of payment statistical record, and it shows that over 4 billion came in 2018. But we also have a large outflow figure, that is Sri Lankans traveling overseas. And in this accounting record, we may be capturing a lot of overestimating a lot of outflows. So to some extent, it may be offsetting, or it may be offsetting from some other balance of payment line items, because the errors and omissions is some line item in the balance of payment. And if this is being overstated, this number would have been exploded. So it's not happening. So obviously there is some offset. but certainly the number, the importance of tourism is high, but it may be not as high as the official records indicate. Okay, this is kind of the revenues from 2018 that I captured by various tourism entities. And this shows you that from the cultural triangle, especially Sigiriya, etc., large amount of revenue is collected. And some of it is plowed back into the industry. So let's look at some arrival stats. This shows you the seasonality pattern of tourist arrivals. And you can clearly see that there are two seasons, that there's a peak season during the winter and then a slump, and then a revival in the middle of the year during the Perahera and the mid-summer break. And then there's a slump again and a revival. And the Chinese have a slightly different seasonality. And when they come, then you have different patterns. But you can see 2020, there's an acute slump, and that is the impact from COVID. So this is end of March figure, and I'm sure that the April figure will even be further down. So this is just an example by the numbers of the whole industry. It's a snapshot that you can have a look at it at leisure. And these statistics are for 2018. So we have formally about 2,500 room inventory in the country in the formal sector. This shows you 2019. The graph on the left side shows you the number of visitors. And the previous year, the visitors 2018 was 2.3 million. Last year, it had come down to 1.9 million. Again, leading the sector is Indians. There's been a significant reduction in Chinese arrivals. And the middle graph shows you the average stay. So for the immigration computer, they can figure it out because they know when you came and when you left. And you can see the Europeans are the people who are staying a lot longer. You would see even Canadians very long. And I hazard a guess that it's probably Sri Lankan immigrants from Canada who are coming back to their country. And the total guest nights, which is a volume figure, which is the arrivals into the average stay, that gives you the volume figure. So what really matters is not the number of visitors, but how long they stay. And again, if you look at this figure, it's heavily dependent on Western Europeans. So other destinations are important, but still almost 50%, if you put East Europeans and West Europeans, they account for 50% of guest nights. This is a similar slide done for 2018, which was a normal year. And you can see that the arrival number was the record 2.3 million, and the average stay was about 10.8, which is a little bit similar to last year. And again, a similar pattern for guest nights. So what is the reason why most of these people come? And this is how it's categorized at 80, because a tourist is only a person who comes for 24 hours. So they could have multiple motives. 81% basically have come for pleasure and holiday, and 10% are visiting relative and friends. So they could be, we have a large diaspora that it is estimated the permanent diaspora is closer to 1.5 million people. And from this diaspora, basically, a lot of them come back home. But some of them don't have a home also. So they do stay in hotels, etc. And they do go around the country. And then a very small amount of business visitors and some others. So what is the gender mix of these visitors? And at the total level, it is slightly skewed to males. But that skewness comes because of South Asians and a lot of Indians specifically, it's skewed to males. So there may be a lot of traders and business people who come multiple times. But interestingly, many of the other destinations, and especially the European destinations and East Asia, it's actually skewed to women. Now, this is an interesting statistic. I don't know whether there's a relationship, but you see it in the media that the men are more susceptible to COVID-19 than women. So I don't know whether it's a genetic trait or whether it's a lifestyle issue. And this shows you the demographic profiling. Again, these are all 2018 statistics because 2019 stats are not here, but it's indicative of the trend. And you can see the demographic, the age structure of the visitors. And amongst the Western Europeans who stay longer, you can see that there is a skewness towards above 60. So in other cohorts, maybe it's reflection of their demographics also that they have older populations. But again, it's sensitive because this cohort basically is more susceptible to infection. And it remains to be seen what their behavior is going to be. This shows you the average stay in the country and roughly where they spend time. So there's a skewness to Colombo because of the Asian travelers. They probably spend a little more days in Colombo, but a lot of it is in the south coast and some of it is in the center. This shows you where they go in Sri Lanka. So 25% of people who visit Sri Lanka go to the cultural triangle, and then they go to Peradeniya, etc. And this shows you in the cultural triangle on the right-hand side that of all the visitors, actually tourists are only 20%. So there are a lot of domestic visitors who visit these sites. And the way they know it is that ticket prices have difference. So that's how they capture this statistic. Okay, so how do tourists get here? Most of them get here via aviation. This is from Flight Radar 24, and this is pre-lockdown. Some countries may have lockdown towards the end of February, but it shows you a sea of aircrafts. Now, this is something that we unearthed from their site, so maybe it's an aggregated view over the day or a particular snapshot. It shows a lot of planes in the sky. See what happened 1 month later. That intensity has significantly reduced. And those blue aircrafts seem to have some kind of satellite tracking, so that's how they come out in blue. This shows you on the 20th of April, which was yesterday, what the pattern is. And you can see that this is a zoomed view, that the activity level has significantly come down. And look at the picture on the bottom right-hand corner, which shows activity in our part of the world. And it has basically come to a standstill. Now, if you were to look at this Middle Eastern picture, maybe a couple of months ago, with the hubs being in the Middle East, you would see a lot of flights. And also in India. This shows you what's happening to the aircraft fleet. And aircrafts are fairly expensive pieces of equipment, between $50 million and $200 million. And they are not designed to be parked on the ground. But this collage on the right shows you the aircraft that have been parked. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a photograph of Sri Lankan Airlines planes, but through Flight Radar, they track what's on the ground. And on the left side shows you the fleet of aircrafts that are on the ground. And you can see some pieces of equipment have not moved for the last 29 days. Now, Vipula may correct me, but this was from Flight Radar 24 website, which I thought was a neat piece of statistics. Yeah. This shows you basically what's happening from Colombo Airport, and it gives you an overview of all the flights, and most of them are short haul, and most of it is hub through the Middle East. And then you have a few long haul flights, especially from Sri Lanka, going to London and Melbourne. And then, of course, a whole bunch of flights that go out to East Asia, Japan, north of China, etc. This is today, again from the Flight Radar 24 app. It shows you the departure and arrival schedule. So although the airport is supposed to be closed, there is some activity. Now, it will be interesting for people to give some insight, please, what's going on here. This is again 2018 statistics. This shows you basically from the 2.3 million visitors who came, who brought them here. And Sri Lankan Airlines in 2018 accounted for about 35% of arrivals. And this shows you all the different other airlines. The next slide basically shows you which carriers brought tourists from which parts of the world. And you can see that, as I said, the guest nights, the majority of the guest nights is the Western and Eastern Europeans, or entire Europe, including places like Ukraine. It's not Sri Lankan Airlines that bought a bulk of those tourists, and we were highly dependent on Middle Eastern carriers. This shows you basically the arrivals in 2018 at the airport. And we had something like 5.4 million arrivals, and tourists were only 2.3 million. So the balance is Sri Lankans. And the reason that I put it is the economics of an aircraft is not only dependent on tourists traveling, but it's also other people on those aircrafts, because it's about filling the aircraft as much as possible. And on the right, you see the transit passengers. So again, I think the economics of Sri Lankan Airlines are highly dependent on carrying transit passengers from other locations. This is a snapshot of Sri Lankan Airlines. This is their route network on the right. They have 25 aircrafts. Again, from their website, 12 are wide body, 13 are narrow body. And they have revenues of about 180 billion, of which passenger revenue is 82% and cargo is 9%. So the context is, we will ask Vipula whether he can repurpose his aircraft for cargo. This is something that came in yesterday. So is this the future of air travel? And this is Emirates. So they were doing pre-flight health checks. And for those, I don't know how many of you have, this is of course a blood prick, but the nasopharyngeal test is they put a plastic piece up your nose, and I have had it last year for influenza, and it's not a very comforting experience. So let's see who are the lodging providers in Sri Lanka. So there is a mainstream. These are the people who come on tour packages, and they come to a particular destination. They have a particular lodging itinerary, and they have some programmed activities. You also have a niche segment or an increasingly widening segment that who comes here for an experience. So the question is that increasingly, most of the tourists, are they looking for a destination, a particular resort to go, or are they looking for a room for a night? And what they are seeking is an experience. So the hotel, the lodging sector has many players. So you have the formal hotels, and then you have resorts, but you also have non-hotel sectors that are contesting in the marketplace. So you have apartments through things like booking, through Airbnb, etc., who are also offering their services. There are small guest houses that have been enabled by booking.com and even homestays. And some of these new type of experiential tourists, they are looking for an authentic experience. It has to be affordable, and it also has to be available. And that is why platforms, search platforms like booking.com and Agoda, etc., have enabled these people to find these niche offerings. Now, this is the kind of inventory that exists in Sri Lanka, that the formal tourist hotels account for about 42,000 rooms, again at the end of 2018, and the balance inventory is supplementary establishments. Now, there is also an inventory that is not registered with SLTDA, which is enabled by booking.com. And over the years, the authorities have tried to get them all registered, but not all of them are registered. And this shows you where the tourists have stayed. So you can see that this gray part is the people who probably stayed in establishments that are not registered, because that is a recipe. So from these formal sector establishments, something like 85% were foreign and only about 15% were local. The composition may have changed in 2019. This shows you the long tail in tourism, which means that there's a lot of small establishments basically that account for a lot of the inventory. This is a few years old, but it's illustrative that the large hotels that you see don't account for a majority of the inventory. And this histogram shows you that analysis, that something like 55% of the room inventory is accounted by establishments with 20 or less rooms. And this 3D graph shows you where these establishments are located. And you can see a majority of them are located around the coast. Of course, there are spatterings in new places, like you see on the bottom there, that is Kataragama, and then in the Central Hills and the Cultural Triangle, and increasingly something on the East Coast. This shows you on the formal sector that what is the kind of occupancy levels. And you can see that towards the end of 2019, it came down. This goes to show the demand-supply imbalance in the industry and why there will be a lot of price-based competition. This is a cityscape view of Colombo, and there's a lot of apartments being built. And our estimate is that there's about 15,000 new units coming into the market or already under construction. And the question is, are they all owner-occupied, or are they going to be repurposed for even short stays? This is a cluster of another sector related to tourism, restaurants. And you get a lot of concentration in the city. And this is across the country. So this is also a sector that will get affected. So that there are the travel facilitators. So basically, you can divide it into two parts. One is your traditional travel operators, who probably account for between 50 and 55% of tourists who come in. And they are comprised of tour operators, international tour operators, who are linked with destination management companies in Sri Lanka, DMC, and some of the better known corporate names are in that business. And on the right side are the OTAs. The OTAs are people like Agoda and Booking.com, the online travel agents, who are increasingly accounting for a larger share of the arrivals because they can go after the long tail. And this shows you kind of the analysis of how tourists decide where to come. So there is an expected cost and there's an expected utility or benefit that tourists also perceive. And that benefit has to be promoted. If not, there's a lot of competing offerings and there's a lot of other attributes that come into play before they decide where to come to. This shows you for the UK, the kind of spending pattern. And this is from the UK Statistics Office for 2018. So Sri Lanka is a longer stay destination. And if the unit cost is lower, they stay longer. But you can see that they're willing to spend a lot more on other locations. Let's look at the exposure of the tourism sector to the financial sector. This graph shows you the total credit from the financial system outstanding. So that's banks and finance companies. And that figure is about 12 trillion, which is about 80% of GDP. And 7.7 trillion is outstanding to the private sector. This is where the credit has gone, right? So a lot of it went into the construction sector. But the area in red is what went into the tourism sector. So this graph shows you the tourism total. So as the end of 2019, in the official classification, which is mainly through the banking system, there's about 235 billion outstanding. And 632 billion is outstanding in leasing. Now that's across the country, across so many different industries. But in that, also there will be an exposure to tourism because people would have bought higher cars, etc. And in the personal loan category, which is a big number, almost $1 trillion rupees, that's about 13% of total credit. There's a lot of people, especially at the executive level, at the individual proprietary level, who would have borrowed from the formal sector. So with a complete drop in revenue, their ability to service this is going to be difficult. And the tourist exposure, the official exposure, is about 3% of outstanding credit. There have been moratoriums. So there was a post-Easter moratorium, which was going to last in the end of March or April. And you could only be eligible if you were registered with the SLTDA, and it was only on performing loans. And what it endeavored to do was to postpone the payment of capital payment, principal payment for 1 year, and basically reschedule some of the interest payment also. So as of the end of March, there were about 4,000 accounts under moratorium, which was about 100 billion. So that's about 45% of the total credit to the tourism sector has been under moratorium. And then there's a post-COVID moratorium, which is going to further extend that credit. That 100 billion figure may go up because I think that given time till the end of April. Employment. Now, finally, employment in tourism, again, according to SLTDA, is about 160,000 people. 80% of that is direct employment in the hotel sector. Now, there's a lot of informal activity going on, which is not captured in these statistics. And finally, just a slide on pay cuts, layoffs, and furloughs. So, pay cuts, you can't mandate it. An employer can't mandate its employees to take a pay cut, and it has to be with their consent. And if you have 100 people and 90 people agree for a pay cut, you can't force the other 10 people to also fall in line. They can dissent. Even if you exercise a pay cut, you can't proportionately scale down the EPF and ETF contribution according to the law. If you try to terminate employees or fire in the American parlance, you are you have to go in front of the Labour Commissioner, and there is a formula for the termination of employment act, and it is per employee capped at 1.25 million. And in an establishment with fairly older employees who have served you for 15, 20 years, the cost will be about 20 times average monthly payroll cost. So it's a very costly exercise. You try to do a termination, you probably go bankrupt. You've also heard this word called furloughs, which means compulsory no pay leave, which is not permitted under a law. But a lot of these rules, there could be flexibility by the Labour Commissioner. So in an extreme situation like this, forbearance would be required. So that brings to an end my presentation. I hope I set up some platform for a more fruitful discussion. The slides will be made available on the Advocata website post this call. So we can get started by getting the views of the panelists. So this is how I briefed the panelists. I asked them to speak for 10 minutes and give an overview of the current situation. And then we will have a second round where we speak to them for about 5 minutes each, giving some kind of overview of how we can recover from this. So following the order of how tourists get here, I'm going to ask Vipula to make a presentation of the current status quo of the aviation sector and his company, Sri Lankan Airlines, which is the national carrier. Over to you, Vipula.
Thank you, Murtaza. It's a wonderful analysis with a lot of data. Just a while ago, I got a text message saying the Virgin Australia has requested for a $1.2 billion bailout package from the Australian government, and which was refused by the Australian government. So, and also you would have seen last night Richard Branson offering one of his islands in the Caribbean as collateral, which is a tough time and very challenging time for all of us. Also, you would have seen last night the WTI, the oil prices reaching below zero, which is unprecedented in the global markets. If you look at the latest IATA statistics or the estimates, they have estimated 314 billion revenue loss year on year for the global aviation industry, which is translated to passenger numbers, it's about 55%. Worst affected markets are like some of our key tourist destinations like Europe and even US and the Middle East and India. Mainly the two of, for example, Asia Pacific also expected to come, the passenger numbers are expected to come down by about 35%. So it's unprecedented and challenging time for all of us. More than anybody else, most of the airlines, we carry certain amounts of fixed costs. Now, the number one component is the lease price, lease cost. If you know the global aviation fleet, I would say a majority, I would say good 70 to 80% of the aircraft are leases, with very little ECA-backed funding coming for the rest. So when you have to ground these aircraft, like we are not in a position to pay the lease rental. So what we have done from the airline's point of view is that we have spoken to our key lessors and we have got some concessions in terms of rent deferrals, etc. The other serious factor is the cost of the staff cost. So staff costs, we have introduced some initiatives like, deferring payments and basically certain pay cuts, etc. So this situation, according to IATA, is going to continue at least for the next 6 to 9 months. So we have to see how we can adapt and reduce our cost structures to be in competition with the rest of the world. So we don't see, now what we have done is we have internally worked out our route map and to see what are the opportunities that we will have in the immediate future and short to medium term. So we will, whatever the strategies and also the fleet deployments, we will do accordingly. Now coming back to the tourism, like many other things, it all depends on the economic well-being of the passengers or the individuals. So going by the job cuts and the pay reductions in the international market, so I wouldn't see that tourism returning to the norms in the near future, at least till the Q2. Having said that, I also feel I'm an optimist. I feel that now countries that will recover fast, and also the European, some of the developed countries in the European regions, like get stuck with the lockdowns, etc., they might start traveling by the winter this year. So it's an hope we are all having. So as I told you, aviation is a capacity-driven business. So we got to manage our capacity effectively, and we will have to look at a new business model. Like, we are a 40-year-old airline with so many legacies. In fact, what we have been discussing internally is to reinvent our business model. So we will focus more on e-commerce, and also bypassing the intermediary, which will happen in many leisure and travel related industries as well. At the same time, we will look at our operating patterns, not on the fleet, on the human resources, to see how best we can be competitive in short to medium term. One of the worrying factor for me is that majority of our major markets, like for transit passengers as well as for the Indian market. India is one of the worst affected countries. The unfortunate thing is no one knows the magnitude of the economic as well as the health impact of India, because very few data, considering the high population density and all that. So we are uncertain about how India is going to behave, and I personally feel that this will take a long time. So we will have a major challenge there to see if the Indian markets don't recover within the next 6 months or so, then we'll have to have new opportunities. I also see that new opportunities would emerge from Northeast. Yeah, you can see the China. You just showed that Murtaza, the flight radar. And you see the Chinese domestic carriers and the US domestic carriers. They have already started, the Chinese carriers. And I was talking to somebody yesterday, they said that they see about 40% movement in Chinese domestic markets. Same way, markets like Korea and Japan will bounce back fast, and even places like Vietnam, I would think so. So from a strategic point of view, like, we will look at new markets and focus on those, but we will come under severe competition from our Middle Eastern friends, who are most of the times irrational. So they got huge fleets with large, financing costs. So they would want to deploy the capacity in all these opportunity, all the markets that are available. So only way that we could survive is we got to keep our costs under control and focus on what we are good at. Same way, I'm hoping that the Australian market also will bounce back. All our plans to recommence flight to like key strategic destinations like Frankfurt, Paris, Sydney, we will very closely monitor these within the next few weeks. Today the situation changes on a daily basis and hourly basis. So what is right for today may not be right in 2 weeks' time, so 3 weeks' time. So we got to have some kind of hope and focus, and then we got to quickly adapt whatever the action that we think is suitable. So I'll stop at this point unless you have any specific questions. We can get into the
for the benefit of the audience, Vipula, maybe you can give us a quick update on the status of your company. I was showing all the aircraft on the ground. How many are flying? Are you having any revenues? Your expense and cost structure? What are the kind of steps that you have taken to reduce the cash outflows?
Yeah. So as you know, this is cash-driven business. So at the moment, we get a lot of opportunities to do. You would have seen those flights. We do a lot of special flights, not only for the Sri Lankans, like helping other nationals like Australia. We did a couple of flights, and China and UK. And we do a lot of cargo flights. So those flights keep us going. But still, that is not sufficient to meet our fixed overheads. That's why we have made certain some kind of agreements with our key lessors to defer some rentals. And we have also, one of the things you've got to remind is we are a state-backed airline. So government would support us, because you should never underestimate or undermine the contribution of this airline to the country. Last, you would have seen that we have carried about 35% of the tourists, and our economic value, if you look at last year, it could be about closer to $2 billion. So which is significant, and being an island nation and airline is important. So we are also talking to the government. We are confident that they will help us.
So Vipula, can you just give me two data points? One is, what is your monthly fixed leasing cost, and roughly what is your monthly payroll cost?
The lease cost, if you look at my fixed overheads, the lease cost is the number one, which comes to about 40% of my total monthly fixed costs, because assume the entire fleet is on ground, and the payroll also comes to about 25%. So we have been generating cash initially, but and also with a couple of credit lines we have been managing. The leases, we have got some deferrals.
So the 40% of the cost, what is the value of that?
A value transfer is about $14 million. Yeah.
$14 million is the monthly lease cost.
Yeah.
And your payroll cost?
Lease cost. Yeah, payroll cost comes to about $7 to $8 million. Yeah, so.
Okay. And were you able to reduce some of that payroll costs?
Yes, we have done. We have taken certain cuts, and also we have also a lot of contract and other staff. We have temporarily, send them on no pay leave, because these are with the service providers. These are not our direct costs. And so hopefully within the next, April was bad, but now we see a lot of inquiries on the cargo and on the other special flights. So we will make some money to cover the cash flows.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker will be Mahen. Mahen, maybe you can give your presentation and start with explaining who your organization represents.
Yeah. So thank you, Musa. So I'm here in my capacity as president of SLITO. SLITO is the Sri Lanka Association of Inbound Tour Operators. We have a membership of around 200 members. We also call DMCs. We bring in annually around 55% of the tourists coming into Sri Lanka. And we employ in our DMCs, we have around 4,000 people working for us at the moment. At the moment, of course, our business has come to ground zero.
Mahen, speak a little louder.
Yeah, at the moment, of course, our business has come to ground zero due to all these reasons. Like I was saying, most of our business that we bring into Sri Lanka, we are working with the formal sector. So 90% of our business goes to the formal sector, where we are paying the VAT and the TDL and all the other taxes. So this is what we bring in. And our tourists that we bring in generally spend about 10 days to 14 days minimum stay in Sri Lanka. At the moment, of course, we have not terminated any of our employees. We have asked the government for some soft loans without interest, which can be payable within the next 3 years. We are hopeful that we will have some positive news on this. If, of course, that doesn't arrive, maybe we will have to take some measures to cut our staff cost. Coming back also on the financial packages that we have been offered by the government, we are quite happy with it. Of course, there are some small issues that maybe we have to be tailor-made because most of my members are SME, belong to the SME category. And in the SME category, we don't have much collateral, unlike in the hotels or any other business. So this is something that we have to talk with the authorities and come to some kind of an agreement. Apart from that, financially, we are also badly hit because of a VAT concession that was granted to the tourism industry last year by the government. It was not applicable to the DMC industry. So we have appealed to the government on this, and we are expecting a positive news on this in the coming days. So we hope that comes up, because otherwise we are going to be faced with a major crisis, because most of our members will not be able to pay the VAT installment, which is due end of the month in a couple of days' time. I think going forward, like you said, we will have to look at a new business model to promote Sri Lanka, because our main target is to promote Sri Lanka overseas. So I think there are many things that we are at the moment under discussion. We are looking at pros and cons to see how we can manage. Maybe also like how Vipula said, we have to look at new markets, maybe China or Korea. Korea could be another good positive market for us as well. So we have to look at all these markets in the coming weeks. So that's it from me for the moment. Is there something else that you need?
So do you have a sense, Mahen, of how many members you have and how many employment you have within your industry?
Yes, we are at the moment, we have around 200 members in our association, and we have around 4,000 workers working.
So what do you have a sense of what most of the employers have done? Have they asked them to take pay cuts or?
Yes, we have asked most of the employers, companies have given this pay cut option. We have not, in some cases, we also, no pay leave. So there are various reduction slabs that we are working on. We have to go for it, otherwise we cannot survive, because I don't think the tourism industry would revive in the next 8 to 12 months. I mean, it will take a good 1 year, especially because of the crisis in Europe. And also maybe new ways of travel will have to be done with health certificates and things like that. So this is all going to take a little time. So we will have to be on the slow mode for in the coming weeks, months actually.
Okay. So Mahen, we will explore the recovery in the next round. Maybe now I will ask Sanath basically to give you an overview of your association. Maybe you can start off by explaining who you represent, who your membership is, what is the employment level, your estimate, and then give us an update. You need to remove your mute. Sanath, you're muted.
Right. The Hotels Association of Sri Lanka, commonly known as TASL, which I represent, is the apex body of the hotel industry in the country.
Speak a little bit louder.
Can I use my headphones? I think it's better, you know?
Yes, it's fine.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better.
Okay, thanks. So we are the apex body of the hotel industry in the country, and the membership stands at about 240 at the moment, which represents 70% of the room inventory of the country. Our main role is to develop the industry and to lobby with the government. Our industry actually is already recovering from the major crisis last year, which is the Easter Sunday's attack. Our prices fell by nearly 60% due to this Easter attack, and occupancy dropped by 40% last year. Of course, towards the latter part of the year, especially the first 2 months of this year, January, February, and maybe until about 10th of March, industry was recovering quite well. Our industry is the largest investor and the largest employer in the tourism industry. And being a capital-intensive industry with many fixed costs, such as payroll, insurance, maintenance, energy, and high debt financing, industry needs a regular revenue stream to meet all these costs. So this is amidst a serious demand and supply imbalance with nearly 6,500 additional rooms which are in the pipeline. There seems to be a glut in the market at the moment. And if you don't come out of this crisis soon, and if we don't roll out an effective global marketing campaign at the first opportune time, you will see this glut worsens and our margins eroding further. Our hotels remain closed at the moment, as long as the curfew is on. The social distancing measures are there for many to follow. The local events are also shut for the near future. So we are in an environment of zero revenue. This is quite unprecedented in our industry. We never had this time where hotels are always open 24 hours. So this is the first time that the hotels are closed. Our next challenge is management of human resources during this period of zero revenue. Today, only a small team of essential staff are kept to maintain plant and machinery in hotels, and majority of the staff are staying home. In our most member hotels, senior management has taken pay cuts, and others are paid their basic salaries, of course. But the question is, for how long can we go on like this? As an industry, we are faced with multiple hits over the past few years, and especially two major blows in the same year. And the companies don't have any reserves. So with zero revenue, currently the industry is in financial crisis due to this COVID-19. So, but it's not gloom and doom. We are very optimistic. We have confidence that the industry will recover. Our industry has shown high quality of resilience over the years. We are faced with war, terrorism, tsunami, floods, and other viruses like dengue in the past. I can't think of any other industry which has faced so much of calamities as much as tourism. When hotels were bombed last year, we thought it was the end. The tourists fled the country. But gradually, business picked up. It took about 5 to 6 months, and the business picked up and the industry survived. And we are confident that we will pull through this crisis too. It might take more than 6 months or even a year. Hopefully a vaccine will be developed. It is only a matter of time, we know that. So at this point of time, it's a battle for survival. And we are very grateful to the government to come into our rescue. Unlike Sri Lankan Airlines, they have their government owned. We can only go and ask the government for help. And we are very grateful to the government to come into our rescue. Already government has introduced moratoriums and working capital loans for industry. Well, the 2 million people who are directly and indirectly dependent on this industry, which means one in 10 Sri Lankans depend on this industry for their livelihood. So in addition to the opportunities in this industry, employment opportunities in this industry, which earn the second highest foreign exchange to the country, second highest net foreign exchange to the country, I believe it's every Sri Lankan's interest to protect this industry. And I hope we will be able to come back strongly in a few months or few months' time. Murtaza?
Thank you, Sanath, very passionately spoken. Maybe I can probe you on a few things for the benefit of the audience, which is not necessarily all hoteliers. Can you give a sense of what the fixed costs in a hotel are that you cannot shut down, a sense of what the labor costs are, and whether there are any other lease or rental costs?
Yeah, our biggest fixed cost is, of course, the payroll. It takes up nearly 50%, or even in some hotels, even a little bit more. We provide, in addition to salaries, we provide free meals to all the staff, and then uniforms, and so many other, incentive schemes we have, which is not so common to other industries. So our payroll is the highest cost we have, and then comes the energy. Energy takes up around 20 to 30%. We pay the highest electricity rates in the country. It's very strange. We are being, whacked by at every stage. We campaigned very hard, we lobbied very hard, and got some of the taxes removed. That was only a few months ago. But otherwise, hotel industry is one of the few highly taxed industries in this country. Apart from paying for liquor licenses and various other municipal taxes, I will come back to that later. We have been heavily taxed, and it is very difficult to survive in a situation where there's a glut of rooms and our margins are eroding, and to pay all these additional costs is something that we find it very difficult to manage.
So, Sanath, do you have a sense now? Your industry has a fixed component of wage, and then there is a variable component that comes to service charge. So, on a normal operating period, typically people who work in the industry, not necessarily at the management level, but say at the waiter level and housekeeping level, how much do they earn a month?
Well, our minimum wage is around 13,000. That's at entry level. A person with at least a little bit of experience who join our industry starts at that, and then they are getting a portion of the service charge. And if they are good, their service charge is increased to 100% in a short period of time. So service charge varies from 15,000 to 70,000. So it's if you take a national average, I guess service charge in 2018 was around 50,000, 40 to 50,000.
So including their basic salary, some of these people were earning probably about 60 to 70,000 rupees a month.
Yeah, in addition to their basic salary, and of course the overtime payments, because we are open 24 hours, so we need to, deploy staff around the clock, and also on holidays. I mean, our peak business is during Sinhala New Year, especially in resorts, and during Christmas, Vesak time, where everyone go home and they're enjoying themselves, and their public holidays. Our staff have to work, so it's high costs. Our payroll cost is very high as a result. And we have one of the largest public holidays in the world. So with all that, we have to manage this industry. It's quite difficult, especially to manage the human resources.
So besides the payroll costs and service costs, they also get fringe benefits like free meals, and most of them also live on premise, right?
Yes, especially in the resort hotels, and also nowadays with this new protocol of social distancing, we house the staff for 2 weeks currently. As I said earlier, we have essential staff working at the hotel right now to run the plant and machinery. We have to run the air conditioners, we have to run our chillers, we have to run our cold rooms, and maintenance, housekeeping, then the security duties, all are there. But once we open for business, or once we are ready to open for business, we have to completely refurbish our hotels once more, in the sense that we have to paint certain areas. Most of our hotels are closer to the sea, so our daily maintenance cost is very, very high. And the hotel is kept shut for a longer period now. Already a month has gone. To reopen these hotels, we need to spend more money to bring it back to the original state of the interiors and usage. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Sanath, thank you very much for that. And just a message to the other panelists, I'm getting messages saying to focus on the recovery, which will be in round 2. So maybe you can think about strategies, etc., how this industry should focus on the recovery. Kimarli, thank you very much for waiting patiently. You are the regulator, you are the head of the promotion agency and the development agency. So maybe you can give your thoughts from the government of how you see the current industry, what are the challenges that you face from government, and maybe keep your comments on the recovery part to the next session.
Perfect. Thank you, Murtaza, for giving me this opportunity. Can you hear me?
Yes, it was breaking up slightly. You may want to tilt your screen a little bit so that your face is in the middle, and then you can start.
Perfect.
Right.
I've listened to the other three participants as well as yourself, and I'm also deeply concerned about our industry. There are several people in the industry, most of the industry, as some of our presenters, I think Sanath mentioned that most of the hotels are closed. And actually we have done a little bit of a study, and we have found that about 13 hotels or 14 hotels in Sri Lanka at the moment, majority of which are in Colombo. So we are very deeply concerned about the impact this will have. Having said that, I mean, we need to also take stock and use this as an opportunity to look at how we are going to work going forward. We have actually, as you have presented, we have 39,000 rooms, roughly say 40,000 rooms, and 11 to 12,000 registered institutions and individuals. So basically, if you take the segments that are registered at the moment, you have to break it up. One is with regards to the hotels, that is accommodation. When you say hotels, you're talking about basically from the 5-star hotels to rest houses to homestay. So that's one segment. Then you have the travel agents, DMCs, as Mahen correctly explained everything. And then you have individuals who are registered with us. We are our tour guides, drivers, and so on. So those are basically the segments that we are working with. Then we of course have the restaurants and all the other sectors like the spice, the sort of the shops and whatever. So how we see it's impacting this particular pandemic is impacting everybody. And from a regulator perspective, what I'm the chairperson of the 4 institutions. That is SLTDA, which is basically regulation. There's promotion, there's conventions, and of course the hotel school, which is Education Institute. So currently with this pandemic, which is ever-changing situation, what we are doing is we are working actually with the UNDP in creating a 3-stage strategy. First, to understand the situation, we do a situation assessment, we will do an impact assessment and the roadmap. There is some misunderstanding in the industry with some people that we are getting a grant from UNDP. At the moment, that is not what is being offered. What is being offered actually is the assessment, the situation assessment, impact assessment and road mapping, which is critical going forward. We have actually gone through all the industry stakeholders from exhaustive list we have made, not only the regulated sector, but mainly actually the unregulated sector. So we are working on that. Going forward, I think from a regulator's perspective, I'm appealing is that there are 34 associations actually. And we need to actually, the 34 associations need to decide amongst themselves whether this is an effective way to build tourism in this very difficult time. Because we may be able to take some learnings from the garment industry who has got sort of more focus possibly and a bigger, like a fewer associations involved. So now we have associations which are related to a particular industry group, whether it is also Hotels Association or like it's Sanath's case, and then which is the travel agents and so on. And then we have tour guides association, drivers associations. Then we have regional associations like Anuradhapura and so on. So we need to think about going forward, are we going to continue with this arrangement, or are we going to have a better one voice, speaking in one voice about the industry? That is one area. The second area is that with regards particularly for SMEs, I think that SMEs are an important category for us. SMEs are possibly underrepresented on our boards. And I think that there must be a mechanism to get the SME voice also heard in this process going forward. The younger generation also, I find, are now moving into tourism, and I think we need to create an opportunity for them to bring in their view on tourism. I think there's a requirement now to get some fresh thinking as well. So whether it is the bookings or whether it's hotels or how we go about doing things. So that is from the outside perspective, where I'm appealing to the industry also to provide their view, written view on what they want done. I mean, we can all get together here and discuss how bad it is. Yes, it is bad. None of us have experience in this, but we need to find a way out, and we will eventually find out. Eventually, people will travel. It is a question of when the traveler feels comfortable, one, with the country, when the traveler feels comfortable with the actual accommodation he or she is going to stay, when the traveler is comfortable with the airline, that is what Vipula was mentioning, right? So these three, and also fourthly, the traveler comfortable with the country's health system, whether they are able to, if they do come and they fall sick, are we capable of handling? Now, if you look at these very broad 4 segments, you can see, is the traveler comfortable with the airline? That would be, now, as you mentioned, some airlines have already started that process, right? Are they comfortable with the country? And I do believe that when the world opens up again for tourism and people do start to travel, Sri Lanka will be looked at in a positive light in that area, because in the way the government has very proactively handled this pandemic. Is the government, is the investor, the tourist comfortable with the hotel itself? We are actually creating guidelines as you speak. We have taken the Singapore guidelines, we have taken so many other guidelines, including the Health Ministry guideline. And we are working on, actually we have a team in SLTDA working on a guideline for that, and I will explain to you in the next section about this. Then the other side is, are you comfortable if you fall sick in our country, whether we can help you? I think we can, and I think we have proved that. So I think that we have to move forward internally. From my perspective, the 4 organizations I lead, I need to look internally first. There are several areas internally which we have to work on. The automation part of it, streamlining processes, not using procurement processes to not do things, but to use procurement guidelines to do things. So internally, we are going to make a lot of changes, and we will continue with that. We are going to look at the act, redo the act again, have a new act to merge the 3 institutions. Hotel school will be kept separately. So we will proceed as planned to relook at internal arrangements, right? How we are going to streamline our processes. Then with regards to internal, which impacts external, is another section, is where we are completely relooking at the registration process, the classification of hotels. USA Sale Project is actually helping us on this. You know, some of the criteria are now archaic. They need to be looked at. The criteria classification needs to be relooked at. Now, for example, you have a Supreme Court regulation that says you have to have disability rooms. For every 20 rooms, you have to, so some criteria, ratio has been given. These are not implementable for some hotels. We have to look at that. We have to then add in the COVID element of this, which Singapore government has already done for their hotels, where they have an auditing process already created. So this is something we will be doing. Right, so internal work in rationalizing all that, we will continue business as usual. For us, we have to continue, and that's a process we will use. Where we don't have the expertise, we are going to use external resources and get things done, right? So in fact, even the app that was made, actually the website that was made for tourists recently with this issue, where when the pandemic was announced on the 12th of March, when WHO announced it as a pandemic, we had 76,000 tourists at that point. So, we did not have an app. We didn't have a proper PABX, and we still don't actually. Which these are things we have to correct. So the app which was created with the help of ICTA as well as the Murtaza University and so on, that we will expand going forward to create. So we will, so internally that affects externally, and then of course the promotion angle of it, with the Sri Lanka Tourist Promotion Board handles. There's lots of discussions, lots of comments, criticisms, ideas given by the industry, from where they are standing, in what position they are standing in the industry. But one has to remember that the promotion, whatever that has happened before my arrival in January this year, it has happened. And there were board, and whilst people criticizing the industry about it, the reality is that the industry representatives were on the boards, and they are still on boards. So actually the industry is very well represented in our boards actually, except some industry representatives are not, like SME, for example, not represented. hotels association not represented, which accounts for like 50% maybe of the hotel rooms. So going forward with the new act coming in, I have already recommended to include people, some other sectors which are underrepresented. But generally what happens is that whatever that has happened, and we are looking forward, and we are basically going to get more stakeholders to our boards to have a bigger view and a bigger perspective to this. For example, now tour guides, for example, they don't have really a forum. Tourist drivers, for example, they don't have a forum today. And I must be grateful to the minister. He actually in January, pre-COVID for us, it was COVID for China at that time. But at that time, the minister actually initiated a discussion with all, like lots of the associations. And it was a great initiative because he actually spoke to the associations and requested them to give their proposals and so on. So I think going forward, I will follow through what the minister started and request the associations ideally to try to work together. Because then it's easy for me to, as a regulator, as representing the government, to work, because when 34 groups give you 34 different, this is kind of hard. But ideally, if you can work together, that would be great. But if you can't work together, okay, we will deal with 34 proposals going forward. So from my end, while I heard everybody, I think that it's, I have a little bit like a view that I think this is a good opportunity for us to look at tourism again, to look at sustainability of tourism. Now, sustainability of tourism, when you hear industry saying, I cannot pay my salaries, even big names, I cannot pay my salaries for 1 month, we need to advise and work with the players and say, we need to have a more resilient system in place, because tourism industry is susceptible to man-made disasters or pandemics and what have you, tsunami and attacks and what have you. And this will not be the last. I mean, this is a profound catastrophic event, I know, which is impacting global tourism as well as Sri Lanka. So it is probably the most catastrophic. But going forward, we are going to face. And I think the goal really, something that should come out of this discussion and discussions really going forward, should be that the industry together with us should help each other to create a sector that is a little bit more resilient. There were several comments made, and I saw some questions also asked, where what is regarding EU, what is the amount of money that EU is going to give? Can't we give the salaries from EU? Let me clarify. EU is looking at 3.5 billion euros. So that's not a significant amount to pay salaries of 80,000 or so direct employees. The EU is looking at different areas in terms of, and they're not looking out for handouts to pay salaries. Just to clarify to the industry, UNDP 2 is not looking at that. However, some good news is that we are talking to another International Monetary Fund. We have done a study and we have provided them some information. We are working together with Bank of Ceylon, who's coordinating this, as well as the Treasury, where we're looking at the possibility of supporting 40,000 rupee salary holders and below, as well as of the whole industry, irrespective of whether you're in an association or you're not in an association. As long as you're registered with Sri Lanka Tourism, we will look at you. There's lots of questions on that came to me saying, oh, I'm not in an association, but I'm registered with you. If you're registered with SLTDA, we will treat everyone equally. So we will treat everyone who has organizations that have employees equally. So if this goes through, we will be looking at providing some support for employees with 40,000 rupees or less. We are also looking at the tour guides to give a one-off payment. We are also looking at the drivers to give a one-off payment. I have actually already written a proposal in that things, and also for even the restaurant owners who are really hard hit, and lots of other areas, all of them who are registered with us, we are looking at them. And I appeal to those who are not registered, please take action to register. It is not a question of what is the benefit to register. It is a requirement to register. It is a requirement. It's like saying, oh, I can drive. I don't want to have a driving license. Why do I need a driving license? I can drive. you need to have a driving license to drive. It is the same for tourism, whether you're a hotelier or a tour operator or anybody, tour guide or whatever, you need to register. Now, there are certain sections like tour guides and so on, and tour drivers as well. There are, because of the 13th Amendment, there is, because tourism is a devolved subject, you will have various training sessions done by the provinces. That is totally fine. But at the moment, our current focus is to assist our industry, our people who have registered with us. What we have done is actually personally, I have contacted banks to support. I have got lists of borrowers who want help. I have personally got involved, talking to chairmen of banks, talking to CEOs of banks, trying to get assistance to help our industry. And if any banker is listening to this, I'm appealing to you, please stand by our industry. We need your help. We desperately need your help. We have given you so much. Being a banker myself, I know how much income we have got from the banking industry, from the tourism industry. So bankers, I request you, if you any of you are listening here on this podcast, that you sort of help us. And I asked the associations. There's one association that has actually given me a nice compiled list of actually the tour guides. They have given me a nice list of each bank, each borrower from each bank. So that's very useful. So if you need any help like that personally from me, I'm happy to coordinate anything for you. So actually I've spoken to Bank of Ceylon People's Bank and asked them to first as a trial to see how we can help. So of course, the big corporates, I don't think they need my help. They can go directly to the banks and sort them out. But there's a valid point with regards to DMCs, because there are issues, because they are a service provider. And so therefore they may not have the assets that banks kind of insist. So I asked any association contact me directly. So I'll leave it at that at the moment.
Thank you, Kimarli. I just had one specific question. In fact, when we were organizing this event, some of the feedback that we got was that we are not including the large SME component. As I showed in some of my slides, that the internet has enabled a lot of niche and very small players, and you have a significant multiplier effect. What are your ideas of how you can get input from this long tail, this large number of SMEs that may be not formalized into some kind of association structure? And in the interim, what are some of the challenges that they are facing that perhaps we have not heard during this call?
With regards to SMEs, actually there are challenges. That's the reason that we are looking again at the classification. We are looking at the classification because the requirements, titles, there are various requirements that are needed. Now for that, we need to work with the land registry. We need to talk to the provincial council, the Pradesi Sabha, and sort out these things one by one. It is difficult actually to give you an answer. Okay, this is how we'll solve it. The reality is one SME at a time. We have to help them out with whatever the issues they are having. Our team is actually, that's one side of it. The other side of it is already we have, I recall the association, Hikkadu Association met me pre-COVID. I remember, and we had various discussions. Unregistered institutions. So already we have sent letters out. Over 2,000, 3,000 letters have been sent out. We are taking action. First letter, second letter, and third letter, legal action is taken. So in that context, I should also say, whilst I appeal to people to register and I would help them out, I also need to remind them that it's actually a legal requirement to register. Because it is actually unfair, and I think Mahen correctly highlighted that they have been paying TDL, and Sanath, I think, may have mentioned also, they have been paying TDL, and then it is actually unfair when the informal sector does not contribute to this. And Murtaza, I think you did mention about OTAs, online travel agents, and the role they play. And I totally agree, they play an important role. And going forward, I suppose that their impact may be bigger as time goes on, with particularly the younger generation going after sort of booking hotels in that manner. But they too, we need to look at ways of paying for them TDL when we pass the new act. So the online agents, whether you're physically in Sri Lanka or you are overseas, you need to, going forward, I think we need to look at a method that we do capture these people. Be a great opportunity. So the associations can give any input for the act. Actually, right now we are compiling, it's not in the final stage, but the initial stage of preparing an act. So any association wants to write and let us know on specifically on the act itself, you are most welcome to do so, and we will be gladly presenting that to the ministry and having discussions with the ministry on how to do that.
Okay, thank you, Kimarli. Since there's a lot of comments here that they want us to focus on the recovery, which is what most people have tuned in for, maybe I can start with you, Vipula, and would you like to throw about some ideas? By the way, before we start the second session, there is about 1,500 people listening to us, 1,100 people through Facebook, and about 450 people through Zoom. And it's getting recasted on many other platforms. So we'll probably end up with about 2,000 people listening. Vipula, maybe you might want to share some ideas that you have how we can instigate a recovery and what your aviation sector can do to induce demand. Of course, finally, tourists cannot come to Sri Lanka unless they can come by airlines. What are your thoughts? You're muted. You're muted.
Okay, Murtaza, when you look at the aviation sector, you got to look at the tourism, the cargo, and so many other areas, transit as well. So what will happen is there'll be many more bankruptcies to happen, like you would have seen South African and all that. So like you remember soon after Easter, like we had the demise of Jet. So that created opportunity for us during that short frame. So we will have more opportunities coming up in, as I told you, in the new markets like Africa, depending on how fast they would recover. The same way Northeast Asia will bounce back soon, going by the trends. We'll create, which will have more routes, and also some of them may be tourism, some of them may be driven by other factors like transit passengers. For example, if you are looking at Africa, you can connect to India and China, depending on how soon the India is going to recover, and also to Australia to an extent. So those opportunities will come, and we got to, at the moment, what we are doing is we are focusing on short-term initiatives like cargo. As we speak, I got about 30 cargo flights within the next 10 days. So we are helping the shippers, the perishable suppliers mainly from Maldives and to the Middle East. One request from the exporters is that we get a lot of inquiries individually. If the exporters associations can get together and work with us directly, that will help us to make our routes financially viable. I mean, at the end of the day, we got to survive in this period as well. So the request is work as an association and tell us this is what we need, and we can help all of them like what we have done. So more passenger, I wouldn't see the passenger traffic bouncing back till second quarter, but we will, once we reassess the markets, we'll start like depending on the short-term demands, we'll introduce the flights. We've already finalized a network based on the recovery patterns, but what I do today may not hold valid into 1 month's time, but we are doing a very constant reviews of the markets. Same time, we got to maintain our cost structures at a very competitive level, because we'll come under intense pressure from all our Middle Eastern friends. Like they got huge capacities, they start, undercutting each other and destroy us. So being a small carrier with limited financial resources, so we got to make sure we are competitive. So one big factor is that though we will have to negotiate with the lessors further to bring our lease rates down. And in terms of the productivity, we got to look at more effective crew deployment patterns, etc., to sustain the direct operating costs. At the same time, I must tell you now, this is a situation where we all got to work together. I can't go and tell my lessors, hey, I'm not going to pay. Then they have their banking commitments, so they will get into trouble. So we have to help each other. Same with the bankers, same with the lessors, and same with the employees. So if we do that, and if we survive within the next 3 to 6 months, I'm sure we can bounce back and we can get ready once the passenger traffic starts. At the same time, ancillary revenues, we'll have more opportunities. Like we were focusing last 1 or 2 years on a lot of MRO business, the engineering support services. Now with the situation in India and all that, we have already got inquiries and we'll have more opportunities to do MRO business, the maintenance and aircraft maintenance opportunities. Same with, we can make better use of Mattala for other things like parking facilities as well as MROs. Then we, in terms of GD or the distribution channels, we fortunately, we have made a lot of investments over the last 1.5 to 2 years on enhancing our e-commerce platforms. So we got to focus on that more, and we got to basically be very aggressive when it comes to pricing. That would basically bring our selling costs down.
So Vipula, I can interject here. There are some questions coming in, and this was a thought that I had also had. Maybe it's my own ecosystem, but I've generally caught flus and colds more inside aircrafts because maybe it's the pressure, it's the dry air. Now this is highly virulent coronavirus basically, and you see in the media about social distancing, middle seat, nobody sitting. I mean, these things are not practical. Have you got any thoughts of how that health risk can be controlled? And my second question is that you want to comment about your route network, because my slides also showed that Sri Lankan Airlines does not play a large role in bringing European tourists to Sri Lanka. Would you consider re-looking at your route network so that you get a greater share of that European tourists?
Yes, these were like in the previous business plan, we have included places like Frankfurt and Sydney. Unfortunately, we had to defer those, but we will relook at, as I told you, we will revisit these, and depending on how fast these economies recover, and we will see how fast we can start this, because it's important that we go back to some of those destinations so that we'll have a complete network. I mean, to be very fair, we pulled out from places like Frankfurt and Paris for wrong reasons. So you went and adjusted on the one side of the equation without looking at our operating costs and the lease costs, etc. So coming back to the other, so we'll look at like places like Korea. Definitely, if North Asia recovers, we have done the data analytics now, so we see some demand trends. What we also did was we looked at the 2008 financial crisis as a benchmark and discounted it heavily again, and then worked out our planning models. Say, coming back to this testing, now a lot of hype about this, some airlines testing, that is not, I don't know whether it's accepted by, approved by WHO at this stage, but I'm sure in time to come, they will have an instant check, and that will become like, everybody who wants to travel would require to take that, like your yellow fever card or vaccination cards. If you're going to Africa or some other parts, you need that. So that's inevitable. As you said, the aviation spreads a lot of, germs. So it's the chances of getting risk is very high, but it's a question of, as you tell, what steps you are taking to minimize that risk is important.
Okay, Vipula, thank you. I would like to, right at the end, to end the call by you sharing with the audience the Mercy flight that you did to Wuhan, because that was a real kudos to Sri Lankan Airlines. So we'll take it up right at the end after Q&A. Maybe I can move to you, Mahen. As a tour operator, what are your thoughts on how we bring, the recovery strategy? In fact, there is a question here basically, which may be posed to you and even Kimarli. I think the gentleman was from the industry itself. He says that, while this lockdown is going, that many other destinations are not sitting back, that they're actively engaging with the tour operators promoting their destination. So that was a question that came through. Any ideas, Mahen, you have of what kind of strategy we have to follow for the recovery?
First of all, we are actually thankful to the chairperson, because we just
Mahen,
that the cabinet had approved our global advertising campaign. First of all, we are very thankful to our chairperson, because we just heard that the global advertising campaign had got the cabinet approval, so which is excellent, because that the way to work on it, I think, is going to take a little bit of time. So it's a good start, so that we can be ready by the time hopefully the COVID is in its final stages. Of course, we may have to look at the new term of reference on that. coming back to the question that had been posed, I think it's a little bit too early for us to go ahead and promote the country to any other destination, because I think world over we are having a lockdown situation, if I understood the correct question properly. So I think it's a little bit too early. Even countries like New Zealand and even Singapore are still not launched any of their plans as yet, because like Vipula said, the situation is changing day by day, hour by hour. So I think we have to wait a little bit more and see how things go to start off.
So I think, Mahen, the question was more that, at the other end, that tour operators, they have staff and trying to engage with them, not necessarily the public.
You mean the overseas tour operators, right?
Yes.
Well, at the moment, to our knowledge, of course, most of the overseas tour operators are also, mainly our European tour operators are on lockdown. So most of them are working from home. So there's a limited capacity how we can work out anything right now with them, in my opinion. I may be wrong, but maybe Kimarli can, I think she's off. Maybe Kimarli can enlighten more on that, how we can do something about it. And also on the global campaign.
Okay, I will come to Kimarli, but I'll give Sanath the opportunity first. Sanath, the focus, a lot of questions here is asking us to focus on the recovery. Do you have any ideas or strategies? And from a hotel operator perspective, what would you like to see?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Actually, from a hotelier's point of view, we need to revive the industry as soon as it's safe to do so, and help maintain our livelihoods of our thousands of workers whose jobs are presently at stake. So that is the first priority is that. So we need to engage the government and health services as to how we can bring tourists to the country without compromising the health of our people. So after all, we have 7 or 8 billion people living in this world, and I believe 99% of the people are healthy and corona-free. If you can have proper screening and testing systems, adhering to strict social distancing protocols, we can restart our normal lives until such time a vaccine is developed. This is my personal view. Also, the world knows how well we have managed the pandemic and how well we have handled the preventive care. Those skills of our healthcare staff and the entire sector, the healthcare sector, has given confidence to future travelers. And if we handle this well, following strict guidelines, it can be an inducement for people to visit our country. Recovery seems 6 or maybe 8 months or maybe a year from now. But I must say that we are also receiving inquiries and tentative bookings from January onwards. Industry is adopting a very flexible booking policy where a visitor can cancel a booking without a penalty at any time before the intended arrival. We are planning to work with a chairperson and work with STBB, perhaps work on some attractive early bird offers. The Bureau can match, the Sri Lankan Tourism Promotion Bureau perhaps, can match discounts similar to what hotels are offering, similar to this credit card offers which banks offer. So like that, we have to induce the market and people to travel once again. I'm sure Vipula will also consider certain airline deals, perhaps companion-free deals, because airline component of a general tour package comes to about 50 or 60% at times. So airlines' participation in this reviving the tourism post-COVID is essential. And of course, as Mahen mentioned, and as the chairperson also mentioned, the cabinet has given the long overdue approval for our global to roll out a global marketing campaign. So this can be a good beginning, a good start for industry to launch our country into to the world audience. So this has been our major call for the last number of years. In the last 1.5 years, we have had 5, chairmen who were heading our industry, unfortunately, and we could not get this plan forward. So at least now we are in a situation where we have a great capable lady in charge of our promotional bureau and tourism industry. So we believe that we have to plan ahead, plan at least for 5 years, and we can start positioning Sri Lanka as the best island in the world. And I think we have all the qualities, all the ingredients to do that.
Sanath, one question that I had actually to the whole panel. Now, I tried to research this. Most people in developed countries spend about close to 10% of wallet share on leisure, going on holiday. Now, with their economies getting such a shock, and even in those countries, the unemployment levels have improved, furloughs, salary cuts, etc. Besides the health issues, do they think they will have the income to go on leisure?
Well, I mean, if you look at our, traditional markets, our main markets, like for example, after India, the top market, it has been the UK from the West. And UK, although they're on furlough, the government pays 80% of their salary. And they have saved a lot of money now just staying at home. They're not going to pubs, they're not going out to eat, they're spending their time at home. And as a result, they have collected a lot of savings. So I believe that people are dying to get out because they have been locked down at homes for a month or even longer. And there's a great desire for people to travel. But of course, we have to consult the epidemiologists and the health ministry and get clearance to bring these people into the country. And also the airlines have also come up with the rapid testing of passengers. So likewise, even in Sri Lanka, we can have these systems. And I believe there is a demand. And look, we are not dealing with large numbers, Murtaza, in Sri Lanka. We are at the maximum we had in 2018 was 2.3 million, whereas Thailand was attracting 38 million. So for us to get a couple of million tourists out of 8 billion population in the world, it's not a difficult task. I think it's quite easy, provided if we get our marketing right. We should not dump our prices. We've got to be very careful with our prices because hotels can't survive on these low deals, cheap tourists. Our country is not a cheap country. We have a lot of, our operational costs are very high compared to Thailand. Our food costs, the cost of food and all that in Sri Lanka is much higher than in Thailand. So we can't follow that Thailand, model. They go for volume. We have to go for quality more than volume. And I believe that the Western countries are pumping in trillions of dollars into their economy to revive their economies. So once the economies become stable and with the current low oil prices, I'm sure it's easy for people to, for governments to revive these economies. And I think it's not so bad as people think. They are thinking of predicting a great recession, financial crisis. I think we'll be surprised how we will come out of this. I think the world will come out very strongly, of this crisis.
Okay, thank you, Sanath. Very passionately spoken, and we hope so too. So, Kimarli, if I can come back to you, representing the regulator, the Development and Promotion Agency, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions that are coming with regard to the promotion strategy going forward. But one question that I had before you cover that was, it's maybe a bit too soon to celebrate, but generally Sri Lanka has done a reasonable job in containing this virus. And we have had an escalation more so this week, but it seems in a cluster. Is that message being conveyed in a positive light? Because it can signal that Sri Lanka relatively is a safer destination vis-a-vis other countries. And then move on to what your thoughts are on the recovery strategy, and especially a lot of the questions here are about promotion, that there has been a disappointment over the years that not only the strategy, but even the administration of the promotion was suboptimal? And how are you hoping to do it differently? Yes, you can go ahead, Kimarli.
Okay. Actually, how I look at it is, I mean, starting from Vipula and the connectivity part of it. We'll start from the beginning. How does the tourist, before we do the promotion, we need to check first where is the connectivity. So I think this is a good opportunity to look at Sri Lanka. I do understand the need to safeguard Sri Lanka tourism, Sri Lanka airlines and so on. But overall, how do we look at increasing connectivity to Sri Lanka? How do we do a study on all the handling charges, whatever that is entailed, the fuel charges, all that? So are we going to have open sky? Are we going to encourage more airlines to come in? Because though we are placed in a really super location, I'm not so sure that we are sort of optimizing our capability with regards to connectivity, point one. Point number two is with regards to the cost associated with airlines and what have you. I think at the moment, the need to look at, to be a sort of a transit hub, it was discussed at a senior level in the government. I was also participating in that meeting. And the decision was made that we want to work towards being sort of a transit hub for this region. And that's the reason recently in the COVID task force, which I'm a member of, we discussed and we agreed that the 6-hour transit will be increased to 10 or 12 hours. And we will give various facilities. So I think we should make some learnings maybe from Singapore and Dubai many years ago. They were not promoting tourism. They first promoted their airport for transit passengers, and then only subsequently used the airline to market their country in tourism. So these are things that we could also learn and look at the connectivity side of it. With regards to the type of client we want, the question, Murtaza, you did ask, which was, do people have enough money to come? They've all lost their jobs. How can they come? That depends on the type of market, the segment you're going after. So if you're just saying, we don't mind any tourist turning up and tourists, it doesn't matter if he comes with $5, $25 or $200, then you'll have a problem, because yes, those people probably lost their jobs. That's then a challenge. So then now the time is right to ask the question. You mentioned the yield per tourist, it's below $200. That's including $200, like 100 and whatever, $170, $130. So really the hotel itself, I mean, you have 5-star hotels at one point selling at $100 and so on. So are we as an industry going to want that going forward or not? For my view is that we need to relook at this. We need to relook at it, because during the 30-year war, we were just happy to have any tourist turning up. So we called anyone turning up a tourist, and we were just happy because we had a war. Now things are changed. In fact, it's the opposite with regards to COVID. It's the opposite. And Murtaza, as you very correctly said, we've done very, very, very well. I'm personally proud to be a Sri Lankan today, as to the way the government, the armed forces, the medical professionals, the support service stepped up. And I personally have seen the contact tracing that is done, the effort that is put, the details that are discussed. It's phenomenal. I mean, I'm just blown with how things have been done. Why are we not marketing it? The question you asked. Right now, there are very research papers that have been done by the GMOA and the medical profession, and those will come out. But at the moment, our airport, as you know, is closed. So to market this kind of a negative, this kind of a marketing, we have to be careful. If it is a tourist board perspective, I don't know whether it's correct that we turn up and say, oh, we are really good at COVID, and then two weeks later we have like 500 or 1,000 patients. So because we really don't know. At the moment, we are handling it very well. Yes, we can say that. With regards to the other action points, I mean, everyone talks promotion. Yes, promotion, yes. And thank you, Sanath, for the compliment. And thank you, Mahen, also for the compliment for getting this, that we got this done. It was a team effort. It was the same team with the previous chairpersons that worked, but this is the same team I worked with, and I'm grateful for particularly few individuals who really put a lot of effort. There was one board member also who helped me a lot. He knows who he is. So thank you very much for the help you gave me, because I'm coming out from a different industry. So it was a learning curve for me. So with regards to global promotion, now everyone thinks global promotion is a way to fix all their problems. It's seriously not. It's seriously not. You need to look at your own first. Please look at your own product. Please look at your own service. Please look at your balance sheet. Please look at your P&L and cash flow and how you operate. Please look at how you promote your product yourself. Now with technology, I mean, you can promote your product yourself. So do not stay put waiting for tourism board or Sri Lanka tourism to promote and solve all the problems. It's not going to happen that way. Yes, we are going to promote Sri Lanka altogether. We are grateful for the president and the government for approving it with no amendments whatsoever. They approved it as we gave it, the way we gave it. And we are looking at the PR agency. We are looking at a destination marketing companies and so on, so on, so on. Now the question is going to be asked, what are the countries? We had put countries, but we will be reviewing them. Because as you guys correctly spoke before, there are countries that will get out of this pandemic faster than others. So we will heed to that. We actually, an international organization is assisting us with a research-based marketing to analyze not just countries only, like say China or India or Korea, as we discussed in this group, but to see what type of client you want from that group. The intrepid traveler will probably be the first person who will travel. The person who's the intrepid traveler will say, probably young, who says, I don't care about COVID, I'm going to travel first. So they may be the first to travel, and we need to encourage them to come in. Then there will be possibly people older, and Murtaza, your presentation is fabulous, because you clearly highlighted that in Europe, it's the older people who travel and they stay longer. And this is probably what we need to market when Europe gets out of this situation. And there again, I mean, private jets. I know that in Maldives, people were flying in wanting to fly in their private jet, take over a whole island. Now that's a good cue for us. Why don't, I already spoke to the civil aviation people, and they are totally supportive. So private jets will fly into Ratmalana. It'll be the fastest turnaround. You'll be into your car by the time within 15 minutes probably, or 20 minutes. So we are looking at Ratmalana for the private jets, giving approvals. Now it takes 48 hours at the moment. UK gives a private jet approval in 4 to 6 hours. We are working towards an 8-hour approval for private jets. So these are things that we need to look as an industry, where we look at particular segments. Now, everyone's going to think, oh, she's asking for $1,000 minimum rate. No, I'm not. And there are general concerns about people that I'm going to insist, no, this is not my job to do. I'm only appealing to the industry, and Sanath already mentioned it. We can't go cutthroat, and end up at near $50 rooms and have mass scale tourism again, at least for the near future. So we need to look at older, probably a little bit with people who have the time to spend in Sri Lanka, the little bit who will spend a little bit more money in Sri Lanka, who would come over. With regards to the actual process, okay, health and safety issues. When we look at health and safety issues, first, we will start with the visa. We've already created the guideline. We are discussing with the various stakeholders, including civil aviation and so on. And the health ministry people, we will be presenting it to them to get their guidance. And the visa process will be changed. When you turn up, you will not be able to have visa. Everyone will need to apply for a visa. Everyone will be requested to have a test. Now, I know the industry and everyone in Sri Lanka, we think we are all experts in health, but what we will do is we will talk to the health experts and we will ask them what test to do, PCR test, rapid test, antibody test, whatever the correct test. We will put it in the visa application 2 weeks before your arrival. Please try to get a visa. Now, question is, are we going to make it mandatory or are we not? That decision will be made with the health staff. Then we will ask them to book their hotels, their accommodation. Hotels means it doesn't have to be 5-star. It could be any hotel you want. You do it. You can book. However, I will go to hotels and the requirement for certification going forward, which will be costly. Then you will turn up whether we are going to give visas. Now, currently visas are single entry, and we are restructuring that, and we are looking at the possibility like Dubai to, when you apply to get you a 5-year visa, and encourage people to return to Sri Lanka and not make it a once in a lifetime event. We are actually wanting, and this I appeal to the DMCs and hotels and everyone in the industry to not to make Sri Lanka like, you know, when you're making a plan for itinerary for a tourist, don't do all of Sri Lanka like in 7 days or 12 days. Okay, done. You don't need to return to Sri Lanka again approach. Try to encourage people to go to other areas. I mean, we have standard sites which we are going, and you know, like you saw Sigiriya, the amount of money CCF makes, which is perfect. But we should look at places like Anuradhapura. We should look at places like Polonnaruwa. Anuradhapura is completely ignored in this process and has so much history. So these are things that I encourage people who do make itineraries to include other areas and help the whole community, all of Sri Lanka. Look at Jaffna, look at Batticaloa, look at Mana, look at every other area where we can help and make Sri Lanka a place where people return rather than we've done it. We've ticked Sri Lanka kind of approach. So with regards to the visa, I've explained to you, I'm suggesting, which is not finalized, but we are suggesting, it's already documented, that you should book your accommodation before you come, because we need to know where we are going to be going, right? When you turn up at the airport, we already know about you, because we will speak to the airlines and ask them to give us the information about you and where you have traveled, and all that will be on the visa application before, right? When you turn up, we will have the necessary chambers to go through the PCR test or the rapid test or the antibody test at our cost done. I have already spoken to the Army commander, who's absolutely supportive in helping us with that process. There are 2 ways. You will then go, either you are healthy in the eyes of or not healthy for this purpose. So if you are healthy, you will proceed on to immigration. At immigration, you will go through the normal procedure, and you will be given an app that you can get into, the tourism app. When you register, you will get all the information on Sri Lanka and all the certified hotels with regards to COVID. I will explain that in a minute. You will also have maps, you will have information on the country, etc., etc., etc. This is not to book hotels. There's some people who do get concerned saying, oh, I'm going to have a booking agency. No, this is not the idea. This is just to give tourists information, and for tourists to be registered with us. And then we know where they're going also, that because of the COVID issue, right? Then we will be looking at transport. We will have certified transportation, because why? They have to have the spray done. They have to do all that. We will have that certified. So people who are able to do that will be certified. We have no preference for anybody. Whoever is certified, it can be an individual person, it can be a company, it can be any transport unit can get themselves certified. Then they will enter their hotel. When they enter their hotel, there will be a detailed protocol that hotels would be given, and we would be auditing. We have already looked at the Singapore model. Singapore model is already in place, and they are having a Singapore SG clean kind of tag put on these hotels. We need to do a complete process, and we have already looked at how, from the client who enters in, what happens to him with everything being disinfected, to social distancing with regards to no buffets, and even the tables to be spread aside. To have, I mean, we can't make a hotel, I like the comparison, Murtaza, you made with hospital, the definition, and hotel. And while we don't want a hotel to look like a hospital and smell of bleach, we will be making sure that all measures will be taken. There will be a checklist provided to hotels, how housekeeping needs to be done, and particularly we will be looking at safety of our staff, our employees. A separate guideline is already been made for staff, and the requirement to have a doctor agreed and approved by the hotel that works with them, who tracks their staff, and before they go home, that there's a quarantine process of some sort where we give a clean bill of health before they go back to their villages. Because the last thing we need is an employee going back to his village after being in a hotel and infecting the whole village there. So there's a process that we will do with regards to a guest who will turn up and who we have concerns when we do the PCR test or whatever the test we do and we are not happy with it. Then we will talk to hotels and have registered army managed quarantine hotels, which will be 4-star or 5-star or whatever, and you can charge $1,100, $150 or whatever the top dollar you want to charge, and do that so that then that area is done, and after that we will give them their quarantine certificates and they can move on. So I mean, this is basically what we are looking at the moment with regards to the question about promotion. Please be assured that already the terms of reference have been done. It is not the right time to obviously implement these things, but we are getting everything done. We've already spoken to the ministry and they're issuing the letters for the tender committee and the evaluation committee and the procurement committee, because it's a bit of a time-consuming exercise. So I think we should start immediately, and we have started already. And that process, I reckon, will take 3 to 6 months. A lot of the staff even doesn't have exposure because we've never really done this before. So it's a learning process. And but we will be using professional organizations, even with helping us with the auditing and the procurement, the assessments, and so on. So a lot of international organizations and professional organizations will be used to expedite the process.
Thank you, Kimarli. Sometimes your speech was breaking because of the internet connection, but I think most people understood because there are lots of people giving the thumbs up. It's a very detailed thing. I didn't realize that you all had gone to such details. I'm presuming that all this will be written up and put on your website and distributed to the industry. There are a couple, I want to get into the Q&A because almost over 150 questions have come in and we won't have time to take all of them. But I want to quickly ask you one question, Kimarli, but I'm going to ask both Sanath and Mahen to think about this, about the reaction of locals to tourists. We know at the early stages of the coronavirus that people reacted quite adversely to Chinese tourists. And I know examples of if they got into a lift, locals jumped out or vice versa. But Kimarli, my question to you was, the key bottleneck is the airport, right? I mean, nobody can come here without reopening the airport, and there's a lot of Sri Lankans also stuck outside. Maybe Vipula even may have some. What if there's a lot of uncertainty? We could even open the city. What would be the milestone that has to happen for the airport to open?
Actually, that was discussed. That was discussed at the COVID task force as well. The first priority, if you like, is that we need to bring back our Sri Lankans back. That is actually the first priority. So there are various numbers have been mentioned. Some say 3,000, some say 50,000, 59,000, whatever it is. There are Sri Lankans that need to be brought back. So today you are having a flight now from Nepal and Bangladesh, India are being brought back. There are army personnel who are overseas, they have to be brought back. There are government officials who are overseas, they have to be brought back. There are doctors sent on training overseas, they have to be brought back. There is a list already made of priority list. How do we bring our own citizens back to Sri Lanka? So we will first address that issue. Simultaneously, while that process is going on and bringing back our own citizens, we are simultaneously helping the embassies. So day to day, we are involved with the embassies, assisting them. Vipula, his team, the civil aviation, all these guys are helping out. I mean, Sri Lankan Airlines, I mean, for me, I'm so proud of Sri Lankan Airlines. I mean, what they have done is phenomenal. I mean, for a moment, I don't even mind the losses, because what we feel about the airline, how they stood up and how they did this. So I think that is phenomenal. So we are helping airlines, we are helping embassies to repatriate or take back their citizens. That is happening parallelly. Now we are stuck at this figure, and frankly, I think these people are not wanting perhaps to go. So there's 11,000 or so guests. I know some hotels owners who spoke to me. One Ayurveda hotel, the guests are there, don't want to go, they are happier here, then they are more comfortable, which is perfect for us. This is fine, and that is not a problem. So so we will sort of look at it step by step. When are we going to open the airport is not known and not decided at the moment in the COVID task force, to be very honest with you. So I cannot tell you it will be this month, and I'm not sure whether it will be soon. But we are looking at business for exports and so on. There's a requirement for businessmen and women to travel overseas and to do work related, export related. There is a thought process to have a look at that and whether we should help on that end. But you have to understand that the people working in the airport, there was also, Vipula might be able to confirm this, there was an infection of someone in the airport as part of that. Short answer is the decision is still not made.
Okay, thank you, Kimarli. One of the comments that came in is that when you were explaining the processes that you're going to follow, that it may be a bit laborious and bureaucratic. So my comment is that you may want to try to digitize some of it so that, you know, the bureaucracy and ease of use is better. It's just a comment. I'll just move on to Sanath and Mahen to get a quick view of how our locals will react to tourists. Mahen, maybe you want to take it. Do you see that as? I mean,
yes,
we are always a very hospitable people. I don't know whether we will let the side down.
Yes, unfortunately, it happened somewhere between the 10th of March till about the 20th of March. So we had this kind of resistance from the local people where they saw every foreigner as a COVID carrier. So we did have that issue. But we managed to somehow or other, through a lot of publicity, even we went all out on it and bring it down. So, so at the moment, of course, we have no issues. A lot of people are keeping, there are a lot of homestays as well still operating out of those 11,000 foreigners who are in Sri Lanka at the moment. But I think we need to educate the locals as well on that matter. I don't know, Sanath, whether you have something on that.
You want to make a comment? You need to unmute.
Are you asking me?
Yes, Sanath. Do you have a comment about locals reacting to foreigners?
Yes, this is actually even not only the locals, even foreigners, but even the hotel staff have been victimized by certain their villagers. So this is something that we need to address in the short and medium terms. We can't do it on our own. We need our chairperson's support in this. I think we need to have a comprehensive campaign locally, to address this issue and to show the country how important tourism is, and that to show that we need to invite the tourists to come here and enjoy the country and our hospitality. We need to once again, educate our people of the importance of tourism. Because right now, tourists are made a target. So we need to rectify this. We can't rectify it just by, allowing the doors open and people to come down. We need to find out the reasons, and we need to have a effective campaign at local level to address this issue.
Okay, Sanath, thank you. I will get on to the questions. Please keep your answers short because there's a lot, and some of it is, maybe not adequately focused. So Vipula, you have the benefit of the first one. It's a tongue-in-cheek. It has the highest amount of votes. The poster is anonymous and it has 27 votes on Slido. There is no longer any hope for Sri Lankan Airlines. The country can no longer afford it. Can we close it down or privatize? How would you respond? Very shortly.
Good question. I think I need to start with something Kimarli said. No offense now. She was talking of the losses. I can confirm the unaudited results for last financial year. We have brought it. My losses consisting of the interest and the tax, withholding tax, right? If not for Easter and tsunami, the corona, I would have been about $40–50 million EBITDA positive. So there are structural issues in the balance sheet which we need to address. In fact, my chairman and the board, and together with us, we submitted a restructuring plan, some kind of financing package to the government. They have responded it very positively. So that's right. I think we should get some positive action within the next few weeks or months. So whatever the things we have done, I think we have made a remarkable turnaround. But what the answer is, if we didn't have Sri Lankan, what would have happened to the Wuhan flight? And when you look at, as I said, look at the contribution to the economy, not only the passenger, the cargo, the tourists, the other aspects of employment. So got to look at all that. And being an island nation, I think I tend to support that a government or the country like us need a national airline. It could be, but the ownership can be decided. There are many ways of doing this, private sector or private public partnership, but airline is a must. I mean, today we live in a world, we are connected to each other. So that's the short and sweet answer.
Would you require, amongst your turnaround plan, did you contemplate changing or right sizing your fleet, or in any way changing your equipment so that it better caters for more local destinations or regional destinations?
No, I think we need to have a balance. There was a view a couple of years ago, they were saying that we need to confine ourselves to a regional airlines, but the kind of, the infrastructure we are carrying, that doesn't make sense, financially viable. So we need to, what we have done over there are a lot of mismatches in the fleet and the lease rents for high. So we have negotiated and brought down some of those. And also we were addressing the mismatches in the fleet. So with the business plan, what we submitted a couple of months ago, we were looking at, strengthening those things further. But yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Vipula. Next question is from Kishan with 14 votes, and this is to Kimarli. Will you be able to elaborate more on the travel-focused, evidence-based promotion strategy that will be implemented to bounce back? So if I can rephrase it, a lot of policy making, Kimarli, in Sri Lanka is not evidence-based. And, a few years ago, I also had some connection with your agency, and they're not data driven. So the question is coming that whether going forward your strategies will be more evidence and data driven.
Absolutely, Murtaza, absolutely. And we are actually we already started working with the expertise on this. Actually, there's a foreign agency supporting us to do this. So we are, the data that we have is actually, we don't even have satellite accounts. We don't have data even from hotels. These are things that we need to talk to hoteliers and the industry, the DMCs and so on, and talk and how we are going to get more data. This is not available. But with regards to the clientele overseas, we are actually getting expertise because, to be very frank with you, I know my staff internally, we have the capacity and the capability to do it. So we've accepted that, and we are speaking to outside agency to help us to do it. With regards, if I may, respond to the comment that COVID is laborious, the process is laborious. Yes, it will be laborious, I'm afraid, because if you see a COVID patient in hospital in Sri Lanka and what the people have to wear and deal with, I'm afraid hotels would, or accommodations of whatever, it will be laborious, and I'm afraid that it will have to be done. And if you don't want to have the health certificate, you cannot have it. And then we had to discuss with the government what we want to do, whether we are going to insist on the requirements, or we are going to, which I have a feeling we might have to, or we are going to give it optional. The final point, Vipula, sorry if I offended you with the Sri Lankan Airlines comment, but didn't mean to, but it's just that my personal, I'm no airline expert, but my personal perspective is as follows. One, is that I personally believe Sri Lankan Airlines needs to continue, because I think as an island, as you correctly said, it's also an emotional connection as well. I think personally, I would like, losses or not, to have the airline. I mean, there's some say, you could have said Air Force airplane or whatever. That is everyone's personal view. But my personal view is that we should have an airline. And I don't personally believe, I was in aircraft financing in Germany, working in Germany, in Frankfurt for many years. So I have a little bit of exposure, not a lot, and I've forgotten most of my knowledge anyway. But is that Sri Lankan Airlines, probably when it says it makes profits or whatever with EBITDA, it's probably because of the catering and ground handling. Because most airlines alone don't make money, actually, most airlines. And he actually said it very correctly that some of the Middle Eastern airlines are actually supported by their governments and so on. So airlines on its own going forward more so will probably not make money. Yeah, so having said that, I'm a huge fan of Sri Lankan Airlines, and I'm working for the first time, I think, in many years, I probably or never, I was told by Sri Lankan Airlines, where we, tourism board and Sri Lanka Tourism and Sri Lankan Airlines are working together. We are doing, we had so much plans actually for Australia and Germany and whatever, and we are going to be promoting together, and whenever they promote, we pay 50%, and we've already came to that kind of agreement. So I'm a big supporter of Sri Lankan Airlines.
Thank you, Kimarli.
Thank you.
I'll just move on in the interest of time. One question to you, Sanath. It's about fixed costs and minimum occupancy, break-even point. You have a sense, I mean, it depends on the cost structure of different hotels, but on average, what do you think is the break-even occupancy?
There's no set rule as such. It all depends on the number of rooms, the rate you charge. But the thumb rule is that 35%, I would say, 40% at a decent average room rate or RevPAR, we can achieve break-even in Sri Lanka.
There was another question that's coming in. I mean, my slides showed the local guest night from the 2018 data. It was about 15%. And there's a lot of questions coming in about promoting local tourism, and some people are commenting that it may be as high as 30%. I know you are the owner of a city hotel. Can you give us a bit of color on the contribution that local tourists play?
But the local tourists are important. I mean, especially for city hotels, they don't only support us with room revenue, but also with a lot of functions and various other activities. But in the resorts, I believe the local component is around 20 to 22%. So right now, until the country opens up for the international tourists, I think we need to look at the local visitors, local market very actively, and perhaps look at some promotions and to get the Sri Lankans to see the beautiful, enjoy the countryside and our safari parks and reactivate the local market. I don't think it should be very difficult, in spite of all the challenges that we are faced with the COVID-19. I think the local market will be the first to come around. And I think it's very important that we should have plans of reactivating that market, not only at hotel levels, but also at regional levels. Perhaps I always go back to our chairperson because SLTDA is an arm to develop the local tourism, not only to regulate, but so these are the areas that we need to start thinking.
So Sanath, very quickly, you are also a owner of a pseudo city hotel. Can you give some complexion, the food and beverage and banqueting revenue as percentage of revenue? You have a much higher share in a city hotel. What is that?
Yeah, I mean, city hotels can vary, F&B revenue can vary from 50 to 60% of the total revenue.
That was 50 to 60%, is it?
Yeah. It depends how large your F&B spaces are. And with the declining average room rate scenario, your room income is not increasing because the demand is less for rooms for the country, in fact. So therefore, the city hotels depend a lot on the food and beverage revenue more than the room revenue. Of course, room revenue is important for us to have a healthy GOP and a bottom line.
So I believe that the government position is to ban all weddings, also mass gatherings. And you see a plethora of wedding halls all over the countryside that have sprouted over the last 5 to 10 years. So
Yeah.
that activity also has come to a standstill.
Yes, the weddings have come to a standstill presently, but I believe it's only short term. There are a lot of, short-term measures have been taken by the government, very correctly so, but it has a detrimental effect on our industry. For example, the ban of imported items like, alcohol and meats and food items, which has a direct impact on our industry. But we hope it's only temporary, or they should allow that for industry going forward, because although our imported component in our industry is very low, we need certain basic items available freely in our hotels to function, cater for the tourists.
Okay. Kimarli, a couple of other questions, maybe I'll throw it to you. One question is from Dinesh Pereira. He says that he's a small operator and SLTD registration process is cumbersome. Can you simplify? The question is to you, Kimarli.
Yes. We are in the process of simplifying it. However, there are basic requirements too. A lot of people, I mean, I'm happy to personally talk to and him and sort it out, and anyone else as well, because we have a list. The requirement to have the approvals, we have to have the titles. A lot of issues are there with regards to approvals and so on. So when you say streamline the process, there are certain requirements we will have going forward. But if he has anything that he says that we should not include, I'm happy to consider it and happy to look at it and do the relevant gather. I mean, there are structures, for example, violating the coast conservation. So they will never get approval, for example, right? So there are issues like that also, but there may be genuine cases. I cannot believe at the moment there are any genuine cases that are pending where they've given us everything that we have not approved, because it's been tracked very. We are actually looking at it to reduce some of the requirements. So I'm happy to hear his personal input to me.
Okay. The other question also, Kimarli, any thoughts? I mean, the comment here is that, there has been a fairly free market in lodging sector. It allows anybody to build or open a new facility. The question is, do you have any considerations of limiting the amount of new supply because there's a large inventory overhang, or do you feel that a free market should operate?
I personally feel free market should operate. That's my personal view, but I will obviously need to be guided by people in the government as well as the industry. So I'd really like the industry to let me know when they do give the proposals, whether they want it limited or not. My personal gut feeling is let it be open and let the free market decide. I just wanted to say that there's an investor who's coming in from Switzerland. I have not met him and I don't know who he is, but who has been discussing an investment for the last 3 years, I believe, or 4 years, and had not got his approvals. But still, even yesterday, contacted saying, we want to follow up and invest in Sri Lanka. So there are people who are still committed and believe in the potential of Sri Lanka.
Okay, there are lots of other questions and I'm trying to sift through it, but some of it, is difficult for me to put to the panel. So I apologize to the audience that I may not be able to cover a lot of them, and these are not questions that have been voted up on Slido. Maybe I give an opportunity to the other panelists. Do you want to ask questions from your fellow panelists? Vipula, I think you are trying to speak. Maybe you need to unmute.
I'll unmute you. Yeah,
And
thank you.
I was trying to speak. I'll give people after you then.
Okay, sorry, Sanath. I think this is a time that we all have to work together, right? We saw that post-Easter, we adopted the right strategies and we were able to bounce back. And this is where I think we need to support each other with the guidance of the government. That's what tourist board, the hoteliers, everybody. Sanath, as mentioned, I'm sure we can work together and start the advertising plans at the right time. and then also come out with the right packages to encourage the tourists to come in. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. The best news I have heard this morning so far is from the chairperson, that she said that she's almost in the process and be able to finalize soon a wage support scheme for hospitality staff. This is something, it's in the top of our agenda at the moment, because government has given us 2 months of soft loans, which actually our members are not so happy with the caveats that they have developed in order to disburse these funds. We are an industry, we are an association where more than 60% of our members are from the SME sector. And even during the last Easter bomb, soon after the Easter bomb attack, government gave a relief package with so many conditions. And we found it very difficult to, maneuver and negotiate around the bankers. It's not the bankers' fault, but it's the way the central bank issued this relief with so many preconditions, which makes the whole effort, dysfunctional. So our members are finding very difficult even right now with the caveats that it's containing in this relief package. They're asking for a business plan. So our members go with the business plan. Bank obviously won't accept any business plan right now. And we take certain assumptions and plan cash flow or plan back a business plan. And the banks can't understand because it's a worldwide pandemic. The world international travel has come to a standstill. So these kind of things has to be removed from the relief package, I believe. If you had to get this access to the funds as fast as possible, this is something that we'd like to request the government to kindly look at it once more and remove some of these detrimental caveats from the relief package. And the other thing is and also the chairperson very correctly said she will appeal to the bankers if we have problems. I think she'll get a lot of calls from our members from afternoon onwards, because our members are having serious problems in getting access to these funds. So those are the two things I want to highlight.
Mahen, you want to
also one thing I think that all we are together. I think we should all work as one team and be one voice from the industry, like chairperson also informed it. So I think we got to form this joint council, or we should get together with all our associations and go as one voice together. I think this is a good opportunity for us to do that in the way forward.
Okay. So thank you. Kimarli, I have one question that came in from a different platform. The question, it was more an economist question that, this tourism industry to a large extent have been given very generous tax concessions. As you know, from November or December, the VAT and NBT was taken away. And the rate of corporate tax also has been low. Many operators enjoyed long periods of tax holidays. So going by some of the cues that I discussed in the US, as you know, the cruise line industry didn't get a bailout because they were not registered in the US for tax reasons. That should taxpayers' money be used to significantly assist tourism operators since they have not paid much taxes previously? You have a view on this?
You're talking about you are talking now with regards to tourism. What was given in November for the hotels was long overdue, frankly. That was long overdue, and I think that you cannot say that, because the tourism industry, with the investments we make as well as the employment we provide, we need to be considered an export industry, fact, like the garment industry, for example. That's point one. Point number two, with regards to DMCs, unfortunately, for them, the VAT didn't happen. And in fact, yesterday, day before, all these letters I'm issuing continues to include the fact that DMC's VAT matter needs to be sorted out, right? To zero VAT status, right? So that is number two. Number three is with regards to the unfair treatment of the industry with regards to the provision Council taxation, that the tourism industry was not benefited all this time. It was corrected only last year, November, after many years. And now DMC corrected for them to get the VAT, as well as the provincial council taxes and so on, which needs to be corrected. And also the point is that with tourism, unlike other garments, they have large imports. So probably, I'm no expert in garments, but I guess that it's probably 50 to 50% at least imported. So tourism, the investment is done in Sri Lanka and the remains in Sri Lanka. So I don't know whether I quite agree with that, but this is my personal view on it.
Kimarli,
and with regards to with regards to one other matter, with regards to Sanath saying chairperson agreed that salaries will be paid, I'd like to clarify once that we are in discussion with the foreign international NGO, but it's gone to, I mean, it's progress, put it this way, but I am not at this point confirming that tomorrow morning, I don't like to see a newspaper saying chairperson confirms everyone's getting their salaries. No, that we are in discussion at the moment, great amount of detail is being taken. And this is something that I find that the associations, I mean, when I talk to the associations to provide the information, they are struggling to give the information. So I think associations, I mean, up to date, I don't have comprehensive information of how many people are there with 40 getting salaries of less than 40. And I think associations not only just lobbying and telling, oh, chairperson, you market. I think the associations also need to take a stock of their members, not only their email address, mobile and their name, but beyond how many staff they have, how many staff who have below 40,000 rupee salary, how many staff are between 40 and 50, etc., etc. What is the aggregation? Just click on a button in a crisis like this to provide it to me. So today, this organized international NGO, I'm talking to them and I'm unable to give them numbers, and I have made estimates and provided these numbers. For you said, do you have any questions? It's more like a request. Please coordinate amongst each other. Please get all the information that you need, and please profile your own product and service. It's up to you, each of you, to profile your product. The tourism board will, Sri Lanka tourism will market Sri Lanka, right? You need to sell your product as well as Sri Lanka at the same time. So a lot of expectation that Sri Lanka tourism is going to solve a lot of the problems, but I really think that some level of people should understand that the private sector, when I say private sector, I mean everyone, right? The industry basically needs to take leadership on branding, product, the experience, and so on. I mean, even this Hela Vedakama that we have can leverage on now, Sri Lankan indigenous Ayurveda. I mean, these are things that the private sector, I mean, I will not be creating a product. It is you, the private sector, who will be creating the product. So I appeal to all of you, and I'm always there to help you. And Sanath, don't ask your 200 or 1,000 members to call me. Please make one list like what some of the other associations have done per bank, and I'm happy to help forward it to the banks, because otherwise now I'm going to get like 1,000 calls saying their bank details. Association by association, please make bank by bank a list and send it to me. I've already done it with the tour guides. I'm happy to do it to the others too.
So on that note, Kimarli, I will try to take this session to an end because it's 2.5 hours. One issue, Kimarli, connectivity was not the best. So basically, some of the things that you said may have been dropped out, and there may be journalists on this call. So at least they can forward any clarification to Advocata and they can pass it on to you, or if they have a way to connect with you directly, better you clarify because you don't want to be misquoted. So if I can now turn to Vipula and ask you to give us a more positive, upbeat story. I think this was one of your finest hours of Sri Lanka and the Mercy flight to Wuhan. I don't know whether your story was told in other media. I didn't come across it, but maybe for the benefit of our audience, can you give us some color of how that whole operation came about, how you organized it, who volunteered, and what was the end result. You need to unmute, Vipula.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
It was a collective team effort, starting from our planning teams to operational teams to the cabin crew, who I would say risked their, the lives. At that time, nobody knew what this corona was to that extent. So, I mean, we all worked together, and we got a lot of support from the government, the President's office, the foreign ministry, etc. And they did the impossible. So that clearly shows the courage and the sacrifice of our staff. That's the reflection of that. I mean, end result is that we were there to help the country in need of at the time when it was required. Imagine if a foreign airline was there, they wouldn't have done it. But at the same time, one of the concerns that I had as a CEO was, which was not told in the media properly, was that it was a risk to an extent. Imagine when we were coming back from Wuhan, if we had a bird strike or a weather disruption or diversion, nobody would have accepted the flight, they would have given landing right. These things happen in aviation. You get hit by a bird or a weather disruptions and the diversion. So that was a risk that we had to manage. Of course, in terms of other protocol, we followed all the guidelines given by IATA and the World Health Organization by the book. And so it was a collective team effort, so which I'm very happy and proud of my team. At the same time, we are doing many other flights, right? You would have seen like a couple of other flights will be done. We did a couple of flights weeks ago. I will continue to do that and make sure, work with the government to make sure that we bring these passengers as and when they are ready. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Vipula, for that update. And on that note, I would like to bring today's discussion to an end. As Winston Churchill said, the only thing that you have to fear is fear itself. In the darkest days of the British Empire, when it looked like Germany was going to overrun the British Isles. So where there is no hope, I think there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I would like to thank Vipula from Sri Lankan, Sanath from TESOL, Mahen from Slido, and Kimarli from the regulator, the promotion and the development agency for having participated in this call. We had at the peak about 1,500 people listening in, and currently I think there is close to 600 people on Facebook and maybe about 300 to 400 people on Zoom. Yeah, so I'm getting a confirmation there's still about 1,000 people listening in, and there are a lot of other platforms that we are rebroadcasting on. As I said, Advocata, I'm representing Advocata here as the moderator. Its mission is to increase economic freedom and provide choice to citizens. And I hope that this kind of a platform has allowed airing of different views. Advocata is led by dynamic CEO Sanath Fernando, and he has a team behind him, Anita and Anuki, and a few others who have tirelessly worked to make these things happen. Actually, this event happened because we had an event last week on export industry, and there was a lot of feedback coming to have one on tourism. And then on a personal basis, 6 of my analysts worked almost till 3 o'clock in the morning last night, putting together a lot of the slides, which may be of value to some. Of course, some of the comments were that they wanted us to focus more on the recovery. But with this kind of audience, we got a lot of laymen and non-industry people also who need to know, because one of the challenges that most industries have in policy making is the ignorance of the public, and hopefully this went some way in creating some greater insights. So thank you very much, and we hope that your industry recovers sooner than later. I'm also trying to go on holidays. I've been stuck at home, or maybe today in my office desk. And leisure is an integral part of our life. And we hope there will be a speedy recovery. Stay safe and goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, Murtaza.
Thank you.